All right, YouTube, if you needed any more evidence that the European Union was completely screwed, Switzerland has backed out of trying to join it. The Swiss had an open application there for joining the European Union, but now they've decided only an idiot would believe that it was a good idea to join it, so their upper house voted to scrap the very idea. In a crippling blow, really, to the Remain camp in the UK, because this is just going to bear out the arguments of many of the British that want to leave. You've got this other European state that's saying, fuck this shit. The project's failed. There's no reason to even consider joining it now. Why bother? It's going to fall apart. And I'll tell you this. Whether or not Brexit succeeds, I think it probably will. I'm certainly would be more happy if it does. I think it would be good for the UK. I think it would be good for all of Europe because it would speed up the dissolution of this retard superstate they're trying to construct. But regardless of whether it goes forward, whether they leave or whether they remain, it no longer even matters. This alone, in a way, has the ability to destroy the European Union. Not that it wouldn't fall in on itself anyway. Even if things were generally peachy keen in some of these states, you know, the Germans don't care, the French don't care, the Belgians don't care, whatever. Even if people in some of these states have no problem with it, the EU is based upon the fundamental problem that you have two completely different mentalities as for the member states. You've got Eastern Europeans, they remember what it's like to be under the thumb of a foreign power. They know what it's like to be purged. They know what it's like to be ruled by a system of authority that they don't have a say in, and they're getting pissed off. The Western Europeans are far more wealthy, but now all of a sudden all those more impoverished people are pouring into their countries. So the Western Europeans are being alienated by mass migration. Try as though Merkel and Hollande and others might say you're a bigot if you oppose mass migration. If you think that the UK is too crowded because it's one fucking relatively small island with now over 65 million people on it, you're a horrible Nazi racist bigot. You're not living in reality, even though that's reality. The Eastern Europeans will be continually pressured by people like Merkel to take migrants, to take immigrants, to take whoever happens to come. The refugee crisis is really destroying the European Union faster. But even then, even if there was no refugee crisis, you can be damn sure that still the EU would eventually fall apart due to economic reasons. In a vacuum, away from any immigration whatsoever. Let's say there was no immigration into Europe at all. Everyone closed their borders except other EU states. It wouldn't even matter. The EU is doomed. It will fall apart. It probably will not exist at all in another decade. The UK leaves, it probably won't exist at all in another 6 or 7 years. With what the Swiss just did, and this is one of the reasons I have respect for the Swiss for having the foresight to do this. With what they've done, the EU will dissolve faster. It is doomed. It's just a matter of how much time it takes to be totally doomed, and what form, if any sort of union going on thereafter happens to take. My vote is on it being essentially Germany and France, rigging things with a few of the other smaller states around them that can't really afford to break away because they're actually deriving a benefit from it. But the UK won't be there. Poland and Hungary will probably leave. The Spanish should leave. The Greeks should leave. One thing Nigel Farage pointed out, now I'll agree with him here. Greece is being screwed by the European Union. Now, do I support communism and socialism? Absolutely not. But the Greeks did vote in a communist party into control of their nation. Unfortunately, because of the EU's own rules, they're still getting completely screwed. Now, that should not be happening. They should determine their own monetary policy. They should determine all of their own policies. They should be a democracy. They should be a system in which the people are properly represented. They're not being properly represented. Nobody in the EU's authority, represents anyone specifically other than maybe Angela Merkel at this higher level. It doesn't make sense. It would be like if in the United States our federal government wasn't actually elected, it was sort of just appointed by people that we elected. What would be the point? What purpose does that serve? Who does it help? Does it help the working class? No, not really. Does it help investors? Doubtful. Does it help business owners? Hell no. Does it help the extremely poor? maybe a little sometimes in certain regions at the expense of others. Who else does it help? Does it help any of these states become more wealthy? Does it help them create jobs? No, it just strangulates everything with bureaucracy. And then we have this MP getting shot this morning. The British press, because I watched it myself, almost immediately declared that it was some pro-Brexit nationalist individual saying, oh, Britain first. Then it turns out, oh, that's probably not actually the case. Might not have said anything. We had at least one witness say so. So you can see how they're trying to spin things. Because the Remain camp is currently falling apart. They're falling apart because people have looked around them and they've realized they're no wealthier than they were. Their status in the world certainly isn't better than it was before. In fact, it's severely diminished. They don't make most of their own laws. They're surrounded by foreigners who have not bothered to assimilate into their culture because those foreigners don't have to assimilate because the UK can't even make its own rules on immigrants. And so you have this problem. Now, the UK will not suddenly become perfect if it leaves. If it leaves the EU, things don't magically become better. It takes effort and it takes time. That's number one. Number two, there probably will be many economic problems in the world when they leave, because it will fuck with the world markets. It will fuck with certainly the markets in Europe especially. It will probably fuck with some businesses in the UK. But if you trust in the free market, within a few years everything will be hunky-dory compared to the rest of the EU, because when the markets get fucked, when productivity gets fucked, when things get shaken up, don't rock the boat. Oh, you rock the boat, it'll fucking tip over, we'll all drown. No, you won't. The UK won't drown. Germany will drown. The UK will swim, but you have to take those first strokes in order to start swimming. Meanwhile, the German boat of state has capsized. Angela Merkel sinks like a stone, probably gets fucking kicked out of office, which, let's face it, would probably be good for the German people. We might see the EU dissolve far faster than it otherwise would. But with polling still close, Leave is ahead in virtually every new poll in the last week. That's a good sign for those who want to leave the European Union. The odds are now in their favor. Regardless of what the odds makers say, the odds are in their favor. I don't fucking care what you say, even if it's only a 51-49 chance, which roughly mimics sort of the polling. It's not an overwhelming majority for the Leave camp. But even if Leave loses, it's going to be so close at that point, because, again, you would have to ignore basically all polling, that it won't even matter. The European Union will still stall out as they scramble to try to sweeten the deal for more and more people in an impossible scenario in which doing any specific thing that can possibly be done under the sun in the EU helps one state at the expense of some other state. That's the fundamental issue. We have that problem here in the United States. When the federal government enacts regulations or ordinances or taxes, it helps some states more than others. Some states pay more than they get back. That just happens. The difference being, of course, we elect the people that represent us in the federal government. Now, do they actually represent us? No. There's a reason why our political system's being shaken to its core too right now. But it's not like the EU system. The EU system is bunk. It's nonsense. It makes no sense. It's a throwback to tyranny. It's a throwback to the pre-Enlightenment period of autocratic rule. It's retarded. Anyone can see through this nonsense. And again, and it's only, I think, 6 days now until the vote. To any of my British viewers, if you haven't voted yet and you're signed up, and I hope you are, I admonish you to vote Leave. I admonish you to vote to get the UK out of the EU, because even if things get fucked, they're going to get fucked anyway. They'll get fucked a lot harder down the road if you stay in the EU, which is failing. If you rip yourself free from it now, you will suffer temporarily and a lot less, and then things will be far greater in the UK in the fairly near future. That way you don't have an entire generation dispossessed of their wealth by being part of this project when it collapses in on itself. That's about all. Peace out.